Right, we're going to move on. Oh, Kylian Mbappe, Sid Lowe.
Oh, yes.
Is he going to be a Real Madrid player this season?
Well, we've talked about this, what feels like all the way through the summer. The funny thing is, we've talked about it endlessly, and every day there's something new. And yet, actually, if you look at what's happened over the summer, every day there isn't anything new. It's the same thing. From the very start, he said, I want to see out my time at PSG, and then I'll go next year. Real Madrid have been briefing all the way through and saying publicly, there's nothing doing. It's nothing to do with us. It's not about us. It's only really PSG who are agitating for a departure. Now, it's true that you can look at this and think, ultimately, it suits everyone for him to go now. But it suits everyone if we forget about the money. And the amounts of money involved are so big and so prohibitive that right now, I think probably the answer is we do get to the end of the window and he remains in Paris.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've been talking for the past 5 years about Kylian Mbappe moving to Real Madrid or the possibility to Kylian Mbappe to move somewhere. But at the end, we are at this point with a bad situation, a very bad atmosphere. I saw that he was 0-0 after 60 minutes for Paris Saint-Germain. He arrived into the dressing room, so the atmosphere right there is not good. It's not good for the team, it's not good for the club, it's not good for the player. So we'll see what happens if he arrives finally to Real Madrid. Everybody's expecting to arrive. I don't know if it's going to be next month or in 2 days or next year, but definitely everybody knows that he's going to arrive to Real Madrid. Hopefully very soon we clear everything and we don't talk anymore only about Mbappe on the field.
Mako, you must be excited to talk about this as opposed to maybe going for a drink with Ian Dark now.
We'll be going for a drink, don't worry about that.
Yes, I mean, yes, Dan, I mean, I've spoken to people at Real Madrid and they maintain that they want to do the deal next year. I mean, that's what they've said. As I said, whether they're telling lies, today will probably ease the pressure on them a lot because they've got the result that they wanted, and there's a good news story in Jude Bellingham getting the goal. But they've said that they want Kylian next year, and the only reason that they won't get him is if he signs a new contract with PSG. So we'll wait and see. I think in an ideal scenario, you'd rather have him now. Of course you would, because Karim Benzema's goals will be missed, whether it's in the Champions League, and I think the weaker Madrid this year because of Karim Benzema not being there and Thibaut Courtois being injured. So I think they will miss Karim Benzema's goals, whether it's in the Champions League or La Liga. So if they bring Mbappe in, I instantly change my opinion because of the quality of the player he is. But I just can't see it happening at this moment in time unless something extraordinary happens, whether it's PSG or Real Madrid's lack of form or somebody gets injured in a Real Madrid shirt.
Well, PSG are not going to cave in terms of the financial ask,
no.
I wouldn't imagine. I mean, it just doesn't make... If we're talking about, I mean, money nowadays, you throw sums about. If you're talking about 40 or 50 million because he's in a free transfer, that's a different argument. But when we're talking about the figures that we're talking...
250.
Yeah, that's just not... This just doesn't make any business sense whatsoever. That would just... I think that would just be foolhardy to say, why would we pay 200 million to get a player we're going to get next year on a free, when we could possibly work things around with who we've got and have success and save a big portion of that money? Of course, he would get a huge and a bigger signing-on fee. But that, to me, for a free transfer, does not make good business sense.
Here's the crazy part about this, and I think another way to look about it, but if you're a Real Madrid fan, and today you're happy that your team beat Athletic Club, and you're happy about Bellingham's performance, and you're happy about your performance overall, if you look at it, you remove yourself from the situation and look at it from a sort of bigger picture perspective, you're probably worse off that you had a good performance today, that you won this game today. Because the chances of Kylian Mbappe coming to Real Madrid would have, I think, gone up exponentially if Real Madrid got off to a poor start, if they didn't score goals, if you had the conversation as to, well, where are the goals going to come from? Where are we going to get results? We don't have a striker. What are we going to do? Drama. And then that perception and that push and that pressure may have forced Real Madrid into a decision. But if Real Madrid is winning and they're scoring goals and they've shifted the narrative towards Jude Bellingham and towards whatever Rodrigo is going to do and towards whatever Vini Jr. is going to do, we're not talking about Benzema and we're not talking about Mbappe until next year. So if you're a Real Madrid fan, you're celebrating today, but in the bigger picture, probably would have rather had a awful performance, lose the game, and get Kylian Mbappe 2 weeks from now.
Tomorrow, meanwhile, Barcelona start the defence of their title, and they'll do so without Dembele. He has made that move to PSG. The question now, I suppose, to ask Sid is Neymar going the other way?
Well, there are some at Barcelona that would like him to, and there are some at Barcelona that very definitely wouldn't like him to. Personally, I think this is a deal that doesn't make a huge amount of sense. It's true that he's extraordinarily talented. I actually think sometimes, at times, we focus so much on what he's like off the pitch and so much on some of the behaviour that we don't always appreciate how good a footballer he is. But right now, having restructured the team, having done things differently with a number of good players coming through and young players and moving to a four-man midfield instead of having three up front, I just don't see the logic in this. Joan Laporta, the president, does. But that's not just driven by footballing motivation. And I think the ideas that Xavi has would suggest that this doesn't happen, quite apart from the money.
No, definitely, because you are trying to make a transition to the young players you have, giving more importance into the field, Gavi, the Pedri, Ansu Fati, Ferran Torres, giving more chances that he didn't have last year. I think he's going to be excited to get back Barcelona and show that he continue being that Neymar that we all know. And it's not going to be about the money, because Barcelona doesn't have. So, yeah, I would love to see him back.
Ian Macker, what do you do with Neymar?
Well, personally, I'd love to see him back at Barcelona because he gives us a new dimension. He gives us something new to talk about. If I was a Barcelona fan, or if I was Xavi, I wouldn't be too interested in him, to be very honest, because of the reasons the boys have just said. But as a neutral, and as someone who's watching the game, and as someone who's travelling to watch, if we bring Neymar back into this league, and we bring Kylian Mbappe possibly next year back into this league, it's a good thing for La Liga in general. It brings it forward a lot more. The superstars are returning again. But I think as a player, and seeing what Neymar has done in the past and seeing what he's done in these recent years, I don't think Barcelona need him. I don't think they need him at all. I think it just upsets the equilibrium a little bit. They've certainly got wide men who work harder than him. Yes, he's an incredibly talented player. Of course he will. But he'll take all the headlines. And I just think it's a problem Xavi doesn't need at this moment in time. I understand the Joan Laporta aspect and the financial, the sponsorship deals, etc., etc. But I just think if you look at it logically as a football person, as a Xavi, as the manager of the team, I just don't think he'd go anywhere near it, to be very honest.
It sounds, doesn't it, like they're capable of pulling off any kind of financial gymnastics to get all these players registered in the end, and they can even make room to sign Neymar somehow or another, even with this salary cap problem. I mean, I think the journalist in me says it's a great story, just like you said.
Yes.
It's a wonderful brand story for us to talk about. But if Xavi, and he's the coach, doesn't really want Neymar around, and he doesn't want the whole sideshow that goes with him, then you really do have to respect that. And he does have a lot of very, very good players to fill those areas, contesting those places. And he's got this wonderful youngster, Lamine Yamal, coming through as well. So what effect would it have on those players to have Neymar come walking back through the door? It's a complicated issue, but I'm kind of split, really, between it being a great story and whether it's really the right thing.
Well, it brings a lot more interest to La Liga.
Yeah, of course, it's Neymar.
There's no doubt about that, and the boys have said it. And if he did come back, it would be intriguing to see how he would fit in, if at all. And would Xavi try and, would one of the younger players who's done really well for him? I mean, we saw in the Super Cup last year in Saudi Arabia, Pedri playing almost as a second striker off Lewandowski, floating around, and he was absolutely brilliant, as was Gavi in that game. So you have to make way with some of these younger players if he comes in. But if he did come in and contributed, people would sit up, maybe like us, and take note. Because let's be quite frank about it. No one outside of France and a few here and there really give a stuff how many goals Kylian Mbappe, Neymar, or even Messi for that matter, scored in Ligue 1. Right? And that's the honest truth. Yeah, we were looking at what they were doing in the Champions League, which wasn't a lot. The rest of it was off the cuff, probably no interest. You pitch up in La Liga, and people are saying, well, you're upsetting the apple cart, it's a bit of a circus, can you do it anymore? And you perform, then you have to sit up and take note. So it would be a great story from a footballing perspective, from a coaching perspective, maybe not the ideal scenario for Xavi.
A nightmare for Xavi would be to have Neymar walk into that locker room, because he takes the room out of the air. And you have...
Air out the room.
That too.
Yeah. It's quite difficult to do the other one.
Thank you, Dan. I
been a
appreciate
long-
it.
That's all right. That's okay.
English is not my native language.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Well.
Do you want any Spanish tips as well?
Yes, please. Well, the air out of the room, Dan. He takes all of it. He takes all of it. Neymar coming into that locker room. And just by being Neymar, he doesn't have to do anything. And he's already attracting attention away from what Xavi is building. And what Xavi's building is a lot of youth. It's a lot of players that are growing and maturing. And the reason this team won last year, La Liga, and they won the title, is because they were a team. There was a structure, an identity to the group where defending first was part of what they did, and they did well. You bring in Neymar, that's not happening. That's changing. The nature of your team is changing. The identity of your team is changing. The locker room is changing. You don't want any part of that if you're Neymar. So this is yet another proof that if Luis and myself were running a team together, we would fail miserably.
Wow.
Because he's looking at it from one perspective, and I'm looking at it from a completely total different perspective. I don't want Neymar. I did not want Dembele. I don't want these players in this team because it would affect how my group is evolving. And this group is evolving. This group is getting better. Don't do anything to harm what seems to be a natural progression.
Said something interesting earlier.
Really? That's a
actually,
first.
For once. Yeah, well, good for one a season. That was... John Laporta thinks it's a good idea. I mean, how many training sessions is Laporta taking a week? How much involvement is he getting?
He's looking at the dollar signs, isn't he?
But in what sense is he going to bring in enough money, more sponsorship, more bums on seats? You know, renovation of the stadium, all that's going on. I mean, how much money is he going to actually bring in, or is this just about making a statement? We were talking about bringing Messi back. He hot-footed it to Major League Soccer and into Miami. So we need to make another sort of statement about bringing in a so-called superstar again. That kind of screams to me of the pathway that they're going down.
Very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.